Do you remember seeing soldiers in Jacob's Ladder hallucinating demons with vibrating heads? Well, the US government actually created those nightmares for real. They tested a drug called BZ on unknowing soldiers that trapped them in waking terrors they couldn't escape. And the Nazi doctor in The Boys from Brazil, obsessed with cloning Hitler, he was based on Joseph Mengele, who performed unspeakable experiments on twins at Auschwitz, some while they were still conscious and screaming. But there's another horror movie where heads literally explode that hides an even darker real-life experiment, one that affected thousands of innocent babies. What was it? We'll stay to the end to find out. Some horror isn't fiction, it's documented history, and today I'm going to show you some of the most terrifying experiments that inspired some of your favorite horror movies. Let's start with the movie that will make you question what's real and what's just in your head. Have you seen Jacob's Ladder? It's the super creepy movie from 1990 where Tim Robbins plays Jacob, a Vietnam vet who starts seeing the scariest things ever. People with faces that shake super fast, demons hiding in the subway, doctors with weird tools at a hospital party. The whole movie feels like one bad fever dream you can't wake up from. What makes Jacob's story so scary is that he can't tell what's real anymore. Is he going crazy? Is someone messing with his mind? Or did something happen to him in Vietnam that changed his brain forever? The movie drops these little hints that maybe the government did something to Jacob and his army buddies. There's this talk about a drug called the Ladder that was given to soldiers to make them more aggressive, but instead it made them turn on each other and have terrible visions. Here's the creepy part. This wasn't just made up for the movie. The US Army really did secret drug tests on thousands of soldiers from the 1950s to the 1970s. They called it the Edgewood Arsenal Human Experiments. At this military base in Maryland, scientists gave soldiers all kind of weird drugs without telling them the whole truth. The worst was one called BZ, which is a super strong hallucinogen that could mess with your mind for days. Soldiers who got BZ reported seeing things that weren't there, feeling like bugs were crawling on their skin, and not knowing what was real for up to 3 days straight. One soldier said, "I couldn't control my thoughts. Faces would melt. People turned into monsters right in front of me." Another described it as the worst nightmare I'd ever had, except I was awake the whole time. The scariest part? These weren't volunteers who knew what they were signing up for. Many soldiers were just told they were testing non-lethal weapons or riot control agents. They had no idea they were being used as human guinea pigs for mind control experiments. In the movie, we see Jacob's unit in Vietnam suddenly freaking out, attacking each other, and having violent freakouts after being drugged. This mirrors what really happened to some soldiers at Edgewood. They lost control, couldn't sleep for days, and had hallucinations so real they couldn't tell what was actually happening. The movie takes things further by making Jacob's hallucinations super demonic and giving the whole story a twist ending I won't spoil. But the basic idea that the government secretly tested mind-altering drugs on its own soldiers and messed them up for life, that part is 100% true. Some real-life test subjects still have problems today. Memory issues, bad dreams, trust issues. Just like Jacob in the movie, they came home different people. The next time you watch Jacob seeing demons with shaking heads on the subway, remember, the government really did create hell inside soldiers' minds. And for some of them, the nightmares never stopped. While American soldiers were being drugged without consent, a Nazi doctor was conducting experiments that were somehow even more evil. And Hollywood turned his real-life horror show into a movie about cloning Hitler. The Boys from Brazil might sound like a fun movie about soccer players. No, it's actually about one of the most evil plans ever, making 94 copies of Adolf Hitler. In this creepy movie from 1978, there's this old Nazi doctor named Joseph Mengele hiding out in South America. And guess what he's up to? He's making little Hitler babies. He took Hitler's DNA and made clones. That means exact copies of one of the world's worst bad guys. Then he placed all these Hitler boys with families that match Hitler's own childhood. The movie shows Mengele ordering his Nazi friends to kill the dads of these Hitler boys when they turn 13. Why? Because the real Hitler's dad died when he was 13, and Mengele wants these boys to grow up exactly like the original Hitler did. Pretty messed up, right? But here's where it gets super creepy. The doctor in the movie wasn't just some made-up villain. Joseph Mengele was a real person who did real experiments on real people. During World War II, the real Mengele worked at a Nazi death camp called Auschwitz. They called him the Angel of Death, not because he was nice, but because he was the opposite. He would stand at the train platform when new prisoners arrived and point left or right, deciding who would live and who would die right away. But Mengele had a special interest in twins. When twin children arrived at the camp, he would take them away from their parents. You get special treatment, he would tell them, but this special treatment was actually horrible experiments. He would measure everything about these twins, their heads, eyes, arms, legs. He'd take their blood. He'd inject one twin with diseases to see if the other twin got sick too. Sometimes he'd put chemicals in their eyes and try to change their eye color. And he did all this stuff without giving them medicine for pain. The worst part, if one twin died during these experiments, Mengele would often kill the other one too, just so he could cut open both bodies and compare them inside. He did this to thousands of twins, most who were just children. After the war ended, the real Mengele escaped to South America, just like in the movie. He was never caught or punished for what he did, and he drowned while swimming at a beach in Brazil in 1979, 1 year after this movie came out. If you ask me, that is a little bit suspicious. So while the movie made up the part about Hitler clones, it was based on a real monster who was obsessed with genetics and twins. The real Mengele really did think he could help create a master race of perfect people through his sick experiments. In the movie, Nazi hunters finally stopped the evil plan, but in real life, most of Mengele's victims never got justice. And some of the twins who survived his experiments are still alive today, still carrying the scars of what that monster did to them. Speaking of governments who experiment on people who didn't ask for it, the CIA had their own freaky program that makes what happened in Jacob's Ladder look like child's play. And it inspired a horror movie that will make you afraid to answer your door at night. Have you ever heard strange numbers being read on a radio at night? Or seen static on your TV that doesn't seem quite right? In the horror movie, The Banshee Chapter, these weird broadcasts aren't just some random noise. They're signals from somewhere else. The movie follows a journalist named Anne who's looking for her missing friend James. Before he disappeared, James took a drug called DMT-19. He filmed himself as the drug kicked in, getting more and more freaked out as he started hearing strange noises and saying, "They're coming!" Then poof, he vanished. Anne discovers this drug has a super creepy history. It was made by the government as part of something called Project MK Ultra. In the movie, taking this drug lets evil beings from another dimension get inside your head. But here's the thing that'll give you goosebumps. Project MK Ultra wasn't made up for the movie. It was 100% real. From the early 1950s to the 1970s, the CIA really did run secret mind control experiments on thousands of Americans, and most of these people had no idea they were being tested on. The CIA wanted to see if they could control people's mind using drugs, hypnosis, electric shocks, and other weird methods. They were scared that the Russians might be doing the same thing, so they needed to figure it out first. One of the drugs they tested was LSD, a super powerful hallucinogen that makes you see and hear things that aren't there. CIA agents would slip this drug into people's drinks at bars and restaurants, then watch what happened through hidden cameras. They even set up fake businesses where adults might go to buy things that aren't allowed to be bought, if you get what I mean. And they would have those workers at those places give men drinks spiked with LSD, and then the CIA guys would stand behind secret walls watching how these drugged up men acted. They called this creepy project Operation Midnight Climax. I'm not even joking. If you don't know what type of business I'm talking about, think about the name really quick, you'll get the idea. Some people who got drugged thought they were going crazy. Some jumped out of windows trying to escape hallucinations. At least one person actually died. Others had their lives completely ruined. The government tried to hide all of this for decades. They even destroyed most of the files about it in 1973. But the truth eventually came out when Congress investigated. Banshee Chapter takes this true story and adds a supernatural twist. In real life, the CIA wasn't trying to contact other dimensions. They just wanted to control people's minds for spy stuff. The movie makes it scarier by saying that the drugs actually open doorways to let evil monsters into our world. But the most unsettling part, we still don't know everything the CIA did during MK Ultra. Some records are still secret, some were destroyed forever. So the next time you hear strange noises on the radio or feel like someone's watching you, maybe it's just your imagination. Or maybe it's something the government let in that never left. Mind control isn't just about secret drugs. Sometimes it's right out in the open, like in our next movie where they force a violent criminal to be good through some seriously disturbing treatment. If you're bad for long enough, can someone force you to be good? That's the question in A Clockwork Orange, one of the weirdest, most disturbing movies ever made. The main character, Alex, is a total nightmare of a teenager. He and his friends beat up homeless people, break into homes, and hurt innocent folks just for fun. They speak this strange, made-up language and absolutely love violence. But then Alex gets caught and sent to prison. That's when things get really messed up. The prison offers him a deal. We can let you out early if you try this new treatment called the Ludovico technique. Poor Alex has no idea what he's in for. They strap him to a chair and use metal clamps to keep his eyes wide open. He can't even blink. Then they inject him with drugs that make him super sick to his stomach. While he's feeling he's gonna throw up, they force him to watch videos of terrible violence, war, and other awful stuff. Do this enough times and Alex's brain starts connecting the dots all wrong. See violence equals feeling sick. Eventually, he can't even think about hurting someone without feeling like he's dying. They've basically rewired his brain against his will. The creepiest part, this isn't completely made up. Real doctors and scientists really did experiment with something called aversion therapy to try and change people's behavior. Starting in the 1930s and getting really popular in the 50s and 60s, doctors would try to cure things like alcoholism by giving patients a medicine that made them vomit whenever they drank alcohol. Or they'd show pictures of whatever the person shouldn't like while zapping them with painful electric shocks. One of the most awful uses was when they tried to cure gay people by showing them pictures of same-sex couples while making them sick or shocking them. Then they'd show pictures of opposite-sex couples without the pain. This horrible practice damaged countless lives and is now considered extremely unethical for good reason. Honestly, when researching this video, I did not know how far this went. That last example I just read hurts my heart. What the movie gets right is how this type of treatment takes away a person's choice. In the film, Alex doesn't become good. He just physically can't be bad anymore, even to defend himself. The government basically turned him into a puppet who has to behave. The doctor in the movie proudly says he can no longer choose to be bad. He can only be good. But is that really good? Or is it just control? The real life versions weren't as extreme as the eye clamps and forced viewing, but the basic idea, making someone associate their bad desires with pain and sickness, was definitely used on real people, often without proper consent. Even today, some places still use forms of aversion therapy. The big question remains, is it okay to control someone's behavior by basically torturing them, even if it makes society safer in the short term? If messing with someone's mind is disturbing, imagine messing with life and death itself. Our next movie features a monster brought to life by electricity, and you might be shocked to learn this wild idea came from real experiments on actual dead bodies. It's alive! It's alive! Yeah, these famous words from Frankenstein have scared people for almost 100 years. We all know the story. A crazy doctor digs up body parts from graveyards, sews them together, and zaps the monster with lightning to bring it to life. When this black and white movie came out in 1931, people were terrified. The scene where Dr. Frankenstein's creation first moves its hand still gives me goosebumps. The monster's confused eyes opening, that bolt through his neck, the huge laboratory filled with sparking electrical machines reaching up to catch lightning from the storm. Most people think this idea of bringing dead bodies back to life with electricity was just made up. Nope. Mary Shelley, who wrote the original Frankenstein story back in 1818, got this creepy idea from real experiments happening during her lifetime. In the late 1700s, an Italian scientist named Luigi Galvani was doing something super weird. He was touching dead frogs' legs with metal tools during thunderstorms. And guess what happened? The frog legs would kick and twitch like they were still alive. Galvani thought he'd found some kind of animal electricity, a special energy that might be the secret to life itself. But it gets way creepier. Galvani's nephew, Giovanni Aldini, took these experiments to a whole new level. He wasn't satisfied with just making frog legs jump. No, he wanted to try it on something bigger, much bigger. Aldini started doing public demonstrations using the bodies of executed criminals. Yep, actual dead people. In 1803, in London, Aldini performed his most famous show on the body of a murderer named George Foster, who had just been hanged. With a huge crowd watching, Aldini connected metal rods to different parts of Foster's body and ran electricity through them. What happened next freaked everybody out. The dead man's jaw started trembling. His facial muscles twisted into weird expressions. One eye actually opened. When Aldini touched the rods to Foster's arm, the dead hand rose up and formed a fist. People in the audience screamed and fainted. Some observers really thought they were watching a dead man come back to life. One newspaper wrote that if Aldini had kept going, Foster might have been fully restored to life. Of course, Foster wasn't coming back to life. His muscles were just reacting to the electricity. But back then, people didn't fully understand how electricity worked. Many wondered, could this amazing power actually restart life? Mary Shelley knew all about these experiments. She and her husband hung out with scientists who talked about this stuff all the time. So when she wrote Frankenstein, she wasn't just making up random horror. She was asking a question people were really wondering about. If electricity could make dead muscles move, could it possibly bring someone back from the dead? The real experiments never created a walking, talking monster, but they did plant a seed of hope and fear in people's minds, that science might someday cross the line between life and death. And that's way scarier than any movie monster. If experimenting with dead bodies wasn't wild enough, our next mad scientist decided to experiment on his own mind. And what he found inside himself was more terrifying than any monster. Have you ever wondered what would happen if you completely cut yourself off from the outside world? No light, no sound, nothing touching your skin, just your thoughts and whatever's hiding in the deepest parts of your mind? That's what the movie Altered States is all about. It stars William Hurt as Eddie Jessup, a scientist who's totally obsessed with finding out what consciousness really is. Eddie locks himself in a special tank filled with warm salt water where he can float in complete darkness and silence. This is called sensory deprivation, and it's supposed to help you have super intense experiences in your mind. But Eddie takes things way further. He travels to Mexico and drinks a special potion made from magic mushrooms used by indigenous people in their spiritual ceremonies. Then he brings this potion back and takes it before getting in his isolation tank. What happens next is totally insane. Eddie doesn't just have weird visions. His entire body starts to change. First, he transforms into a primitive caveman type creature that breaks out of the lab and runs to the zoo, where he kills and eats a small animal. Later, he turns into something even more ancient, like a blob of primordial goo from the beginning of life on Earth. His body is literally de-evolving right before our eyes. The wildest part, this crazy movie was actually based on a real scientist named John C. Lilly, who did super weird experiments on himself back in the 1950s and 60s. Dr. Lilly invented the isolation tank for real. He wanted to know what would happen to the brain when it didn't have any outside stimulation. Scientists thought maybe the brain would just go to sleep if it had nothing to respond to. But Lilly found out something much weirder. The mind creates its own reality when left alone. At first, his experiments were pretty normal, but then Lilly started taking LSD and other psychedelic drugs before getting in the tank. He did this hundreds of times, pushing his mind to places most people never go. In his books, Lilly wrote about communicating with aliens and beings from other dimensions while in the tank. He became convinced there were hidden networks of super intelligent beings controlling reality. One time, he said he found himself in the presence of two godlike entities who ran the universe and showed him how everything works. Lilly also did experiments trying to talk to dolphins, sometimes while on LSD. He even flooded a house so a woman could live with a dolphin for months to try teaching it English. The experiment got super weird and had to be shut down. Unlike in the movie, Lilly never actually turned into a monkey man or a blob, but he did claim his consciousness could leave his body and travel to alternate realities. Many scientists thought he'd gone completely off the deep end. Was Lilly a visionary genius or just someone who fried his brain with too many psychedelics? Either way, his real experiments were almost as bizarre as the movie they inspired. From one man exploring his own mind, we move to something even more scarier. What happens when you put regular people in positions of power over others? Our next experiment shows how quickly normal folks can turn into monsters. Would your friends turn mean if someone gave them a little bit of power? What about you? Would you hurt someone just because a person in charge said it was okay? Das Experiment is this super intense German movie where regular guys sign up for what they think is an easy way to make money. All they have to do is spend 2 weeks in a fake prison for a psychology study. Half of them will be prisoners and half of them will be guards. The scientists running the study tell the guards, you can't hurt the prisoners, but you need to keep them in line. Sounds simple, right? Oh man, that is not simple. At first, everyone's kind of awkward and just playing along. The guards feel silly wearing uniforms. The prisoners think it's just a game, but then something super creepy starts happening. Day by day, hour by hour, the guards start acting more and more like real guards. They make prisoners clean toilets with their bare hands. They wake them up in the middle of the night. They make them stand in painful positions for hours. This one guard named Bruce, a quiet, normal-looking guy, turns into the scariest bully ever. He forces prisoners to strip naked and sprays them with cold water. He locks one guy in a tiny dark box for hours. In the movie, things get so out of control that people actually die. The scientists are supposed to stop the experiment if things get too crazy, but they're so excited about what they're seeing that they let it continue. They become as messed up as the guards are. Here's the really freaky part. This movie is based on something that actually happened in real life. It was called the Stanford Prison Experiment, and it took place in 1971 at Stanford University. A psychologist named Philip Zimbardo got 24 normal college guys and randomly chose who would be prisoners and who would be guards. He set up a fake prison in the basement of the psychology building. The guards got uniforms, sunglasses, and wooden batons. The prisoners got ugly clothes with numbers on them, no underwear, and chains on their ankles. Just like in the movie, the real experiment went bad fast. By the second day, the prisoners staged a rebellion. The guards then crushed it by spraying fire extinguishers at them and forcing them to do push-ups for hours. One guard, who they called John Wayne, became super cruel, making prisoners clean toilets with their bare hands and forcing them to say awful things to each other. Some prisoners had complete breakdowns, crying and screaming to be let out. The real experiment was supposed to last 2 weeks, but Zimbardo had to stop it after just 6 days because things got so out of control. One prisoner was released early because he wouldn't stop crying. Another developed a weird rash all over his body from stress. The movie makes things way more extreme. The real experiment didn't have any deaths or serious physical violence, but what's truly scary is how fast normal people changed when given a little bit of power over others. Even though it happened over 50 years ago, the Stanford Prison Experiment still makes scientists argue about how good people can turn bad so quickly. Was it the uniform, the role, or is there something dark inside all of us just waiting for permission to come out? From fake prisons to real rage, our next horror movie explores what happens when your anger doesn't just hurt your mind. It actually grows into something physical that can hurt others. What if your anger wasn't just a feeling inside you? What if it could grow into something real, something with teeth and claws that could hurt people you're mad at? That's the super gross idea behind David Cronenberg's horror movie, The Brood, from 1979. In the film, there's this lady named Nola who has a lot of anger issues. She's mad at her parents for how they treated her when she was little. She's mad at her ex-husband who's trying to take their daughter away. Nola goes to this weird doctor named Dr. Raglan who runs a place called the Soma Free Institute. Dr. Raglan does a special kind of therapy called psychoplasmics. The way it works is wild. Instead of just talking about your feelings, your body actually changes to show your emotions on the outside. One patient grows weird bumps all over his body to show his emotional bumps. Another gets actual welts and sores from thinking about how much his dad hurt him. But Nola, her therapy goes way further. When Nola gets really angry during therapy sessions, something awful happens. She grows this gross external womb sac on her body. And inside this sack, little dwarf-like monster children that look like angry babies. When they're fully formed, they break out of the sack and go kill whoever Nola is mad at. These creepy little monsters have no belly buttons, and they have faces like angry toddlers. They kill Nola's mom by beating her with hammers. They kill her dad too, and they're starting to attack anyone who gets close to her daughter. This movie has one of the most grossest scenes ever, where we actually see Nola licking clean a newly born rage baby that came out of a sack on her stomach. I'm just getting queasy talking about it. But this is where it gets extra creepy. The psychoplasmics therapy in this movie was actually inspired by real therapies that were super popular in the 1970s. When director David Cronenberg made this movie, there was this big trend called primal therapy, started by a guy named Arthur Janov. In this therapy, patients would dig deep into childhood trauma and express their emotions through screaming, hitting pillows, and having full body emotional breakdowns. Janov believed all of our problems came from primal pain. Hurts from childhood that got trapped in our bodies. The only way to fix it was to relieve the pain and let it out through your body. Some sessions got so intense that people would shake, throw up, or pass out. Another similar therapy was called Gestalt therapy, where patients would talk to empty chairs pretending their parents were sitting there, yelling all the things they never got to say in real life. These therapies were huge in the 70s. For example, John Lennon did primal therapy, so did James Earl Jones. People really believed that screaming out your feelings could heal your body. Of course, the real therapies didn't make monster babies grow out of people's bodies, but Cronenberg took the basic idea that emotions could physically manifest and turned it into his signature body horror. The film asks a super scary question. What if our emotional wounds could become actual physical things? What if the anger we feel inside could grow teeth and claws and go after the people who hurt us? Creating monster babies wasn't disturbing enough. Wait till you learn about our next horror movie, where a real-life medication disaster inspired a story about exploding heads and mind control. You know that moment in a movie that makes you go, whoa, and you never forget it? In Scanners, there's this scene where a guy's head literally explodes. Blood and brain bits go everywhere. It's one of the most famous gross out moments in any horror movie. Scanners came out in 1981, and it's about people with super powerful minds. These scanners can read your thoughts, control your body, and even make your blood vessels pop if they really want to hurt you. That head explosion, that's just a scanner showing off what they can do. In the movie, we find out these scanners weren't born special. They were actually made that way. There was this drug called ephemeral that doctors gave to pregnant women for morning sickness. And it turned out all of those women had scanner babies. The babies were born with these weird psychic powers that nobody expected. The main character, Cameron, gets caught in a battle between good scanners and bad scanners. The head bad guy, Ravok, who's the one who made the dude's head go boom, wants to create an army of scanners by giving more ephemeral to pregnant women, which is a pretty scary plan, right? Well, here's the really creepy part. That part about a drug for pregnant women causing unexpected effects in their babies, that wasn't just made up for a movie. It was based on a real-life medical disaster called the thalidomide tragedy. In the 1950s and early 1960s, doctors in Europe, Canada, and other places gave pregnant women a drug called thalidomide. It was supposed to help with morning sickness and help them sleep better. Doctors said it was super safe. The companies that made it promised it wouldn't hurt the growing babies. But they were so wrong. Drug companies lie all the time. When the babies were born, thousands of them had serious problems. Many were missing arms or legs or had tiny flipper-like limbs instead of normal ones. Some had damaged ears, eyes, or hearts, all because of this medicine their moms took when they were pregnant. See, nobody knew back then that the drugs the mom takes can cross through to the baby. They didn't test medicines properly to make sure they were safe for growing babies. The thalidomide disaster changed medicine forever. Countries made new laws saying drugs had to be tested way more carefully, but that didn't help the families whose lives were already changed forever. The director of Scanners, David Cronenberg, took this real tragedy and thought, what if a drug like that didn't just cause physical changes, but mental ones instead? Instead of missing limbs, what if the babies got psychic powers? It's a sci-fi twist on a real horror story. Think about it. In the movie, the drug company tries to cover up what they did, just like real drug companies tried to avoid blame for thalidomide. The scanner babies grow up feeling different from everyone else, not understanding why they're the way they are, which would be pretty similar to a baby that survived the thalidomide incident. So next time you watch that famous head explosion scene and laugh or say cool special effects, remember, the real story behind the movie is about thousands of families whose lives were exploded by a medicine that was supposed to help them. And let's explore one last horror movie inspired by real-life medical experiments. This one might be the creepiest of all because you can actually visit the place where it happened. Have you ever seen a building that just looks evil? Like it's watching you, waiting for you to come inside? That's Danvers State Hospital, a real place that's so scary they made a horror movie about it called Session 9. The movie follows a team of asbestos removal guys who get a job cleaning up this massive abandoned mental hospital. They're supposed to get in, clean up the asbestos, which is a dangerous material by the way that can make you really sick, so don't eat it, and get out. Simple job, good money. But this building, it does something to people who stay for too long. One worker finds a hidden room with old tape recordings of a patient named Mary. Mary had multiple personalities inside of her, including a super creepy one called Simon, who only comes out in Session 9. As the worker listens to more tapes, weird stuff starts happening. The workers fight with each other. They start seeing things, and they disappear one by one. By the end, we find out that one of the guys has gone completely crazy and killed everyone else. The last line in the movie is super chilling. He says, "I live in the weak and the wounded, Doc." Like something evil in the building found its way inside of him. Here's the actual creepy part though. They filmed this movie in the actual Danvers State Hospital in Massachusetts. The filmmakers didn't need to build scary sets because the real place was terrifying enough on its own. Danvers State Hospital opened way back in 1878. It was built on a hill in a weird bat wing shape with these long, spooky hallways. At first, it was supposed to be a nice place to help people with mental problems, but way too many patients got sent there. Rooms built for one person ended up with 8 people crammed inside. When they ran out of money and staff, that's when really bad stuff started happening. Instead of talking to patients, doctors began doing things to them, like lobotomies. A lobotomy is when doctors drill into your skull while you're still awake and cut connections in your brain. They thought this would fix mental problems. The most common way was called the transorbital lobotomy. The doctor would take what looked like an ice pick, hammer it through the bone above your eyeball, and wiggle it around in your brain. Dr. Walter Freeman, who invented this type of lobotomy, traveled around the country in a van he called his lobotomobile. Yes, I'm serious. He performed over 4,000 of these operations, sometimes doing 25 in a single day. He didn't even wear gloves or a surgical mask. So quick fact check, actually, researching this again, he didn't actually call it the lobotomobile. That's what people called it afterwards, criticizing him. And he wasn't even an actual surgeon. He was just a neurologist. So he'd never done surgery before in his life. After a lobotomy, patients often became like zombies. They couldn't feel emotions properly. They couldn't think clearly. Some couldn't even go to the bathroom by themselves anymore. But hey, at least they weren't causing problems to the staff anymore. Lobotomies were done at Danvers and hundreds of other mental hospitals all across America. Thousands and thousands of people had their brains damaged on purpose. When the makers of Session 9 explored Danvers, they found leftover patient records, old medical tools, and even straitjackets. They used all of these real things in their movie. The building itself became almost like a character. All those long, dark hallways, the peeling paint, the locked rooms where real people suffered. Danvers closed in 1985, and the building was mostly torn down in 2007. They built apartments there, if you can believe it. Would you want to live in an apartment built where they used to scramble people's brains? The scariest thing about Session 9 isn't the ghosts or the creepy voices on the tapes. It's knowing that the real experiments and treatments done at Danvers were often scarier than anything Hollywood could make up. Basically, some of your favorite horror movies are based on experiments that are far scarier than actual horror movies. This was a really interesting video to make. The research was really crazy. I cannot believe that humanity used to do this to people. If you want more videos like this, I have a bunch more horror movies and experiments I researched so I can make another video about this. But let me know down in the comments below. If you want to watch more videos like this, make sure to like and subscribe to the channel because that's the only way to ensure that you see more of my future videos. And if you want to watch more of my content, click the video on the screen now.